The one team I don't want drafting players from UConn. You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Do me a quick favor. See that little button on the bottom of your screen? Click it. Helps our channel grow, our audience grow, and frankly, I truly appreciate all your support. It's invaluable to me and to Locked On Podcast Network. Today's episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn helps you find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions apply. Well, I mentioned in the cold open, one team I don't want drafting any players from the UConn Huskies is the Charlotte Hornets. Yes, no Hornets nest, please. I am a former season ticket holder of the Charlotte Hornets and the Charlotte Bobcats. I used to take many clients to games, probably why I'm not retired by now, because the product was very pitiful. Yes, it's great to sit there and you have your owner is Michael Jordan. That was really cool. And again, if you're trying to impress potential clients for your business, it is 100% cool to bring them to games and impress them with the product that they're seeing on the court. Yes, I'm joking, and I know that there are new owners that bought the team away from the clutches of the greatest player of all time, and probably the worst executive it's ever seen in Michael Jordan. That could be a whole podcast in itself. How Michael Jordan was so great in basketball, yet so absolutely terrible or relentlessly mediocre as an owner and an executive of an NBA franchise. They also just gave a massive 5-year, $260 million contract to LaMelo Ball, who, let's face it, just isn't reliable. He has numbers. I think he's averaging 24 points and 8 assists. But over his last 4 years, he has played 51 games as a rookie, 75 games his second year, 36 games last year, and 22 this year. So you're all in on a player who's, to use a Dan Hurley term, his reliability meter is on the lower side in regards to staying healthy. And that's not a knock on Melo. That's a knock on this organization. Great for the kid for securing the bag and getting, generational wealth for him and his family. Congrats. But there's also a history of drafting UConn players that just have not worked out for one reason or another. We can start with one of the greatest Huskies of all time, Emeka Okafor. First season. The Bobcats were a expansion franchise. Bob Johnson, owner of BET, bought it, named them the Bobcats. They were a franchise that, NBA desperately wanted to get back into North Carolina and Charlotte, where they had success with Larry Johnson, Alonzo Mourning, Muggsy Bogues, etc. I think even if you were a kid at that time, like I was, Hornets jackets were everywhere. So it was a brand, and it wasn't the Hornets, but it was back, and it was a step, right? I think the plan was always to bring the Hornets back. So that's another story. But Okafor was rookie of the year his first season, 15 points, 10 rebounds, almost 2 blocks. Injuries really plagued his second and third season. And then he started to be essentially just a solid, invaluable member of the Hornets, of the Charlotte team that was going absolutely nowhere. He was a 14-10 guy, which is incredible in the NBA. Anyone that says otherwise doesn't know basketball. You should probably change the subject to a topic they're more familiar with. But the reason why there's people like that exist and really can't see past 14-10 as being an incredible basketball player is because of the perception. So I hated that for Emeka. I hated that he wasn't given the recognition that he deserves. And then we'll transition to a guy who had an even better career than Charlotte. Was in both the Bobcats and now what we know as the Hornets. Kemba Walker parlayed a phenomenal UConn career into drafted, I think, 8th or 9th by the Bobcats. But again, organizational path was to make the playoffs. No more. They weren't going all in. They had no plan. They hired Larry Brown, who was 1,000 years old at the time. I really think Larry Brown was 72 years old when they hired him, because I know he was like 80 coaching SMU. So to hire, it'd be like if Hubie Brown, who still does announcing and does a phenomenal job at his age, or any age for that matter, was hired to coach an NBA team. You just know that organization isn't being serious at the moment. But they played at least they played an exciting brand of basketball with Kemba, culminating with the last season of his career, averaging 25.6 points per game. He made third team All NBA, his only All NBA selection. He was a 4-time All Star. Huge part of their branding back from the Bobcats back to the Hornets. I named my old lab Kemba after UConn won it all in 2011. So I was excited selfishly to have him in my backyard and watch him again. But I don't want that to be the case with, say, Steph Castle or Donovan Clingan. And then finally, kind of more, I'm sure there's other players, but more famously draft picks, James Bouknight. Look, I think Book could have used another year in college. Not because it would have enhanced his draft stock, but it probably would have helped his maturity. His body language was, his body was ready for the pros, but his brain was not. And here's a kid who, if he was going to be the focal point of an offense, he always had, I know this is a terrible, probably a blind spot in my worldview, but anytime I see a basketball player, football player, any type of player who has awful body language, I always think that player is selfish. And that to me is just my perception. I don't know James Bouknight from anyone. So I wasn't upset when he went pro. And it didn't shock me when he was sent down to the G League, because ultimately he was waived. And ultimately you have to think about how your outwardly brand, if you will, is received by everybody. I'll give you a great just personal story here. I've gotten multiple, overwhelmingly positive reviews from the show, from fans, even people who don't like UConn, who think I do a good job. But I also take into consideration when someone actually gives me an honest critique. And I felt like there were a couple people who were like, listen, your background sucks. I don't want to see your bed. I don't want to see the bed of a guest bedroom. The backdrop is too far away. It just doesn't look professional. Now, ultimately, I took that as, I think every time you get a constructive criticism, or even if someone's just being a troll, you automatically introspectively think about, could I have done something better? And so for now, while I know I'm not always going to be in this room, I've transitioned into like more of a virtual background. Some people like it, some people hate it, but I thought it was kind of a good compromise until I set it up the way I want it to go. That's me personally. I don't know if when someone goes at a player who's always been the focal point of an offense, always been a superstar, when they have something to work on, if it's received well. And maybe James Bouknight received criticism and he went, really took to it and put his head down and really kind of went after it. The results were never there, so I can't say for sure. What I do know is I think he was at a low point in his career. I know he was arrested for basically falling asleep in a parking lot with like a loaded gun. I have no idea if he had mental health issues, so I'm not gonna speculate. But in 34 games in the 2022-23 season, he averaged 15 minutes a game. It was mediocre by today's standards. Averaged 5 points, 30% from three. That's not what they brought him in as a lottery pick to do. And maybe it's the curse of that franchise. I don't know. So I'm going to give him a pass on this. The Hornets are not a well-run organization. And even in the midst of a new ownership, I don't think a player with maturity issues was going to come in and be a difference maker. And it really, again, tells me everything you need to know about this franchise. They're willing to double down on a player like LaMelo Ball, who isn't a ready-made franchise player. So while Steph or Donovan have 100% better support systems than someone like James Bouknight and have championship pedigree for their own mental health, please do not draft our guys, Charlotte. Please. I'll be selfless here this time. It's the only time I want to see them go, someplace else, anywhere. So when I do the next segment on mock draft predictions and I say, this is where I think a player is going to go, this is where I want them to go, the only place I don't want someplace to go is Charlotte. We'll talk about where I think the starting five is going to go after this. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals who are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. When you're building your dream team for your small business, quality professionals are key. That's why you need to tap into LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs isn't just another job board. It's your secret weapon to find exceptional talent, including those who aren't actively job hunting, but could be a perfect fit for your role. Let me tell you, when I needed a marketing whiz for my business, I turned to LinkedIn Jobs. Within days, I had a list of top-notch candidates eager to join our team. LinkedIn made it effortless. As a former small business owner myself, I understand the juggling act. LinkedIn gets it too. They're always innovating to make hiring a breeze. They even rolled out tools to help you craft job descriptions faster than you can say hired. Did you know that 86% of small businesses snag their perfect hire within 24 hours on LinkedIn? It's no wonder 2.5 million small businesses trust LinkedIn for their hiring needs. Stop searching in the wrong places. Visit linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free today. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. LinkedIn Jobs, where small businesses hire pros like a pro. Terms and conditions apply. All right, so where's everybody going? That's the key thing, right? What are their scouting reports? Put together a few things for you guys today. First where I want them to go, where I think they're going. And my first hot take of this Monday. I hope your Mother's Day weekend was great with all your families. Hope you treated your mother, wife, partner, whatever, to a special day. But my hot take of the week is I think Steph Castle should get drafted before Donovan Clingan. And he should go because he's the player with the most upside of anyone in this draft. Is he 7'2" or 3? No. But I think Steph has the most upside in terms of marketability. He is a low maintenance superstar in waiting. I know I've probably been killed a few times for this one, but to me, his upside is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I don't know if his shooting ability is where Shai's was coming out of Kentucky, but I know that Steph's mentality and his want and his ability to play on the court is 100% where Shai's is. But where do I think where is it? Where are our guys going, right? So I don't think Donovan is going one. I think the Hawks are notorious for picking a flashier player, so I think they're going to go with a foreign player with that first one and not go conservative. And I think he goes 2. Where I want him to go, I think he's going to be number 2 for the Washington Wizards. Where I want him to go is 4 to San Antonio. But Clingan's, to go through this with you guys, and listen, everybody watching this, you're probably a huge UConn fan. Why else would you be listening? Clingan is a massive interior presence who excels as a post threat on offense and a paint protector on defense. 7'7" wingspan, absolutely intimidates opponents and excels at blocking shots without really leaving his feet, which I loved. He got into a little trouble this year with jumping on head fakes, but that all got very much corrected towards the end of the year on the title run. His mobility allows him to be an excellent drop defender in pick and roll, which is 100% why I feel like he is the pick here. His instincts in rebounding, because I don't think he was the volume rebounder people wanted, but that was mostly because the guards funneled back in to pick off a lot of free rebounds that he would normally get. And he has soft hands, making him a threat around the basket. So as a sophomore, Clingan improved dramatically as a post scorer, showcasing soft hook shots with both hands and cleaner footwork. He has great awareness in the paint and passing ability out of the box, which give his potential as a go-to presence in the future. I think Donovan's a fantastic player. I think anybody that picks him in the top 5 is getting a hell of a player, a worker, the type of guy that you can build a franchise around. And is he a Victor Wembanyama, an alien type player that can shoot from 25 feet and take you off the bounce? No, but he's more of a 2024 version of a big than people think. He has that ability to shoot it from deep. I think that's only going to increase, and I think it actually will happen sooner than people think. Oh boy, I think the Hornets are going to select Steph Castle at 6. Where I want him to go, anywhere else. As we mentioned, LaMelo is an unreliable, and they need insurance. I think that this new ownership is actually trending towards trying to be a serious franchise. So who better than to have a serious player in Steph Castle? He's a poised playmaker who dictates tempo with his controlled pace, demonstrating impressive body control and footwork on drives. His size and strength allow him to power through defenders. And By the way, did I see that people are saying that Steph only measured at 6'2.5"? I don't even. I almost dedicated an entire segment to it, but I thought better against it, and I just don't see how that's possible. Anyway, he excels in making simple plays with skip passes, kickouts, and interior feeds. In pick and roll situations, he thrives with the proper spacing, reminiscent of high school days where playmaking was emphasized and more than during his time at UConn as a freshman. For obvious reasons, he wasn't asked to do that. He's an unbelievably capable finisher around the rim or above or below, adept at scoring through contact with either hand. Not at 6'2". Eye roll. Shows scoring potential when his jumper is on, which happened quite frequently this year. However, recent improvements at the free throw line suggest his shooting woes might be more mechanical than related to touch, which I definitely agree with. And these are obviously this is my scouting report. So going back to thinking about that, I think his form is there. I do think it's just more about thought process than. So that to me, that's mechanics. When you have to think through things, you're not just feeling it. But he brings a defensive presence with his size in the backcourt, allowing for versatile defensive schemes. Known for consistent effort, rebounding, and off the ball focus, he remains engaged on both ends of the court. He's a stud. This could be a 3-second segment. Steph Castle is a stud. He's probably the only surefire lottery pick in this entire draft, and I say that with absolute certainty. Whoever drafts this kid, I think he's going to be a success. Next, Alex Caravan. If he stays 35 to San Antonio, I think is a perfect fit. Dynamic offensive player, adept at catch and shoot, demonstrates a willingness to set screens and can be effective on pick and pop from three-pointers. Incredible range. When matched up against smaller guards, he can capitalize with hook shots and backdowns. Didn't do a ton of that in college, obviously. He is the brain center, displays basketball intelligence with a knack for cutting to the rim and making timely passes. Typical below the rim finisher, unless afforded ample space, like in the Purdue game finals where he attacked the rim with a dunk. He's an unconventional. He does have an unconventional shooting form, and releasing the ball from the left side despite being right-handed. But so does Kevin Durant. So it's kind of like, who cares? Not a proficient shooting off the dribble. Also not a concern for what the role he's probably being asked to play. So I guess the question is lateral quickness, shooting consistency against NBA defenders. But that's why right now he's a second-round pick. Tristan Newton, I think this would be a fantastic one for our fan base. I don't necessarily know if this is for certain, but I got Tristan going 54 to the Boston Celtics. I think it's a perfect fit. Stays close to a UConn fan base, not close to home, but a second home. Absolutely a versatile contributor, known for obviously winning and all-around skill set. He has potential to be an elite three-point shooter because his form is great, particularly in spot-up situations. I think his mechanics, I read this and I kind of thought through this. His mechanics could benefit from refinement. I think maybe, but I think it's got to be minimal. Maybe tucking the elbow in a little bit more, but his rotation is there. When he's on, he is as good a shooter as anybody. He's an effective finisher around the rim, mostly below, obviously. Although we did have that finish dunk in the Big East tournament. Listen, transitioning and transferring from East Carolina, he's played pivotal roles in winning back-to-back national championships. I think his limitations are below the rim finishing, but I think he has some athletic constraints, but not much. He's 6'5". His leadership has risen, and I think that's what makes him a draftable player in the 2024 draft. And lastly, Cam Spencer, my guy. I think if he's getting drafted in the first 2 rounds and not an just undrafted free agent, the Denver Nuggets are a perfect fit. Why? Because they run similar sets to UConn. He's a versatile guard, known for strong basketball IQ, obviously, leadership qualities, and intensity on the court. He's a playmaker, and he's a good passer. He's an adept playmaker with excellent court vision, demonstrates that ability to make smart decisions. He's a cerebral player. He sets up his teammates for scoring opportunities. And he's a below-the-rim finisher, but he is a smart below-the-rim finisher. If you've watched, I know he's not as fast, but if you've watched any of this Pacers-Knicks series, and you tell me that TJ McConnell is an NBA player and Cam Spencer is not, I will laugh in your face, because Cam Spencer has that exact same mentality of a TJ McConnell, but is actually taller and more and maybe not as twitchy, but is more cerebral than in even a TJ O'Connell. But, he's got to get there. So someone's got to take a chance at him. He's a reliable catch and shoot player. He's got great range in his 3-point shooting, and his defensive effort is active on-ball pressure. You're trying to tell me that you put Cam Spencer on a superstar in the NBA that's similar to his size, and he's not going to frustrate the living hell out of this guy. He has an absolute willingness to rebound on the offensive and defensive end. He has incredible leadership qualities, and his cerebral approach to the game make him a positive influence on and off the court. He is a locker room guy. He would be an absolute game changer for some locker rooms. And Denver, as a champion, as someone that's trying to go for back-to-back titles, would likely want to continue to have those fits in their locker room as they continue to re-up and acquire talent. Well, let's hope I'm wrong on some of this, including where Steph gets drafted and Alex coming back to UConn. After this, we'll talk about my all-time UConn team. We're going to do it similar to the way the NBA does, third team, second team, and first team. I'm sure you guys are going to love this and disagree with it all at the same time. After this. It's playoff time in the NBA and NHL. Baseball is in full swing, and FanDuel is your place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on everything from slap shots to home runs to slam dunks, all in an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. We are. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Okay, guys. So I'm going to preface this by saying this is my all first team, all UConn, second team, all UConn, third team, all UConn. I had such a hard time with this. Some of these are all over the place. I'm trying to give you my thought process behind this is it's so hard to look back at our history, even with some of my favorite players in that 89-90 team that didn't win a championship, and then juxtaposition that with players that have won 2 titles or that were on an all-time team. And because let's face it, when I look at my all UConn first team, only 3 of the 5 have championships. But you can't negate some players just because their team wasn't the best in college basketball, knowing how difficult it is. So want to preface you guys by saying that. And if you don't like some of these teams, give me your there's basically 15 players. First team, second team, third team. Send me an email, lockedonucon@gmail.com. Send me all your complaints, arguments, whatever you think I'm a crappy host. Feel free. Let's dive into it. And before we do that, I missed this in segment 2, so I'm going to talk about it here in this segment. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all that shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Okay, so all UConn third team at point guard, Shabazz Napier. I'm just going to list these and give my thoughts. Shooting guard, Chris Smith. And automatically right there, someone's going to go, well, Chris Smith played point guard. Well, I can't knock off Khalid El-Amin and Kemba and all these other players too. So we're going to have some players probably out of position. And this is my list anyway. So sit through it. Small forward, Rudy Gay, third team. Power forward, Kevin Freeman. And center, Adama Sanogo. So my thought process of this is, I think Shabazz is one of the 5 best UConn guards of all time. I think Chris Smith is the all-time leading scorer. He's also one of the 5 to 6 best guards of all time in UConn history. Be cool to have them on the same backcourt. Because I think Chris is a better scorer than Shabazz, just purely. And I think Shabazz did a fantastic job running this team. Obviously, won a title. One's played in multiple. Or did Shabazz win 2? I feel like Shabazz won 2. Why am I blanking on that? Was he on that 11 team? Yeah, Shabazz. I mean, listen, Shabazz is one of my favorite players ever. 2 national titles. Good Lord. Must be Monday. Look, I saved you an email, guys. So yeah, I mean, Shabazz, 2-time national champion. I just think again, this was a very difficult exercise. And if you haven't done it, try it. Rudy Gay was a player that I feel like was one of the best players that UConn ever had. Did he win a title? No. On one of the more talented teams in UConn history that lost. Power forward Kevin Freeman, glue guy, won a national championship in 1999. I think he's obviously a phenomenal guy. He's been on hasn't been on Locked On UConn. Love to have you, Kevin. But he's been on staff at UConn multiple times. I just think there's not a better person. I think all his family's graduated from UConn. Talk about, living and breathing UConn Huskies. Kevin Freeman on my all UConn third team. And Adama Sanogo. I mean, you could probably put him on the second team, but this is where I landed. Developmentally, just been an incredible player for UConn. Won a national championship, most outstanding player in the Final Four. Should be on the Chicago Bulls active roster, but I digress. UConn's second team at center, Donovan Clingan, 2-time national champion, back-to-back. This is where I got a little squirrely with this one. Power forward, one of my all-time favorite Huskies, Cliff Robinson, who I have not mentioned recently. God rest his soul. He played center for UConn, but at 6'10" with Donovan Clingan as your center, he's your power forward. And what an amazing tandem that would make. Small forward on this team, Caron Butler. UConn's all second team. Probably a better pro than he was a college player. In fact, I know he was. But, God, he was fantastic. I remember that game against Maryland where they end up losing to the eventual national champion, Maryland Terrapins. But dude was a beast. And hey, where's the movie on him? Why is that stuck in production? We need to get Mark Wahlberg on the phone and figure out why he has time to make movies about him and doing ultra marathons, but can't make the Caron Butler movie. Come on, man, stop working out and get Caron Butler's movie off the cutting room floor. Shooting guard here. This is again where you can call Tristan Newton a point guard in this one, but I called him a shooting guard. And point guard is Khalid El-Amin. So we got Khalid El-Amin at point guard, Tristan Newton at shooting guard, Caron Butler as your small forward, Cliffy Robinson at power forward, and the center, the soon-to-be drafted Donovan Clingan. Okay, so my all UConn first team at point guard, Kemba Walker. I don't know if you can argue with my first team. National champion, 5 games in 5 nights. Just an incredible run. Named my dog after him. Enough said. I'm sure there's plenty of other dogs named Kemba in the world too, and children. Shooting guard, Richard Hamilton. Rip, just had his number retired. I mean, come on. Guy's incredible. National champion, NBA champion. UConn, all first team. Ray Allen. Jesus Shuttlesworth himself. You can't go wrong with Ray. I know he never won a title, but that was an incredibly difficult time in college basketball where there were a million good teams, although UConn was insanely talented during his time frame as well. Same thing you can say here. Donyell Marshall. Never won a title. Doesn't matter. Ray and Donyell were the best players in college basketball, if not the best, one of the handful, best 2, 3, 4 players of their time, not just best at UConn or best in the Big East, but in the country. And then lastly, I have Emeka Okafor. Guy was the best center in UConn history, best defensive center, best all-around player, one National Player of the Year, I believe, by one publication. I don't know if it was consensus, but he was an All-American. That's my all UConn first, second, and third teams. Please give me your entries. I'd love to talk through some of them and even give me your reasons why, why I left off. And if you're an older UConn fan, I did not do Corny Thompson. I did not do team, guys I never saw. I was born in 1981. So my depth of knowledge goes to that first 89-90 team. So if you're watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day, have to turn down the volume with all that shouting, make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel, programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all that screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news. Streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Well, this has been another episode of Locked On UConn. I'm your host, Mark Zanetto, asking you to stay locked in, stay connected, make sure your toughness meter is always rising. And as always, go Huskies.